minta dia masuk balik lah. Okay, so for frogs, respiratory surface, as I've mentioned, so they depend on two organs for respiration, which is the skin and also the lung. Okay, so for skin, we call it as the cutaneous respiration, because the frog depends on the skin. Okay, so if and they also depend on lungs, so that therefore we call it as the pulmocutaneous circuit or respiration. Okay, tapi ini for this one we are going to look at it says here by the cutaneous respiration, exchange of gases occurs through their moist skin. Okay, so syarat semalam yang kita tengok, kalau untuk respiratory surface, they must be moist. Okay, so moist, this is to allow respiratory gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide, to be able to dissolve, okay, before it can diffuse across the respiratory surface. In this case, is the skin. Okay, so it says here amphibian breathe using positive pressure, which involve inflating the lungs with forced airflow. Okay, forced airflow is from the inflated buccal cavity. So it means that when the frogs inhale, okay, it will expand the buccal cavity. Okay, the buccal cavity here, when it expand, it is full with air. Okay, with air. So inside here you have a high pressure inside the buccal cavity, and then what the frog does next is that it will close its nostril and also its mouth, and then push its the lower part of the mouth upward. Okay, so this is to push the air inside the buccal cavity into the lung. So that's why we call this as the positive pressure. Okay, positive pressure breathing. Okay, so you have a high pressure inside the buccal cavity that forces the air into the lung. Okay, so they perform this by filling their buccal cavity with air, close their mouth and nostril, okay, and then elevate, okay, the floor of the oral cavity. So elevate the floor of the oral cavity, so this pushes or reduce the volume of the vocal cavity and reduces reduce the volume, okay, increase the pressure. Okay, increase the pressure. So this pushes the air into the lung. Okay, so this pushes the air from the buccal cavity down into the trachea and into the lung. Okay, so that is for frog. So ingat frog, they use positive pressure. Okay, high pressure inside the buccal cavity, which is will be forced into the lung. Okay. So for birds, okay, so flying is a high energy activity. So the flying activity will require obviously high concentration of oxygen. Okay, so it means that the birds will always need continuous supply of oxygen. Okay, so birds generally have a high metabolic rate and require a great deal of oxygen. Okay, so the oxygen will be supplied to the cellular respiration to generate energy to allow the bird to be able to fly. So birds have evolved a two-cycle breathing process. Please highlight this one. Okay, they evolve a two-cycle breathing process involving both lungs that involve unidirectional airflow. Okay, unidirectional airflow, it means that once the bird inhale the air from the atmosphere, so it enters into the trachea, tapi dia tak masuk dulu dalam lung. For bird, they have air sac. They have posterior and also anterior air sac. So in between the posterior and also anterior air sac, there will be the lung. Okay, so nanti kita tengok airflow dia. The airflow must be in one direction. Okay, one direction. Okay. So kita tengok flow dia nanti kejap lagi. So the bird lungs channel air through tiny air vessels called the parabronchi. So inside the lung of the bird, they have parabronchi. Okay, so parabronchi is air tubes. So where the air tubes, okay, akan ada, so udara akan masuk lalu. Ini udara, kan? Okay, so nanti akan ada blood vessels, okay, running across this. Okay, running across this like that. So this is blood vessels. Okay, so the blood will flow in this direction. So as blood flows across the parabronchi, so oxygen will enter into the blood vessels. Okay, so air passes one way through the tube while blood flows in the opposite direction. This is called as the cross current. Bukan counter current, ya, cross current. Okay, cross current. So bird lungs have two groups of air sac, which is anterior and also posterior air sac. So as you can see from this diagram, okay, so it shows here. So this is the lung, okay, of the bird. At the back here we have the posterior air sac, and in front here you have the anterior air sac. Okay, so as the bird inhale, okay, so the air will be passed through pass down the trachea, tapi dia tak masuk dulu dekat anterior, ya, dia akan turun kat trachea into the posterior and then into the lung and then into the anterior and then out through the trachea. So that's why tadi dia cakap unidirectional, one direction sahaja. Okay, one direction. So so kita tengok dia punya flow. So on inhalation, okay, so when the bird inhale, okay, so both set of air sacs expand. Okay, so when the bird inhale, so the anterior and posterior air sac will expand. Okay, expand. So inhaled air flows down the trachea, bypasses the lungs and fill up the posterior air sac. Okay, so at the same time, the anterior air sac will be filled with stale air from the lungs. Stale air is the used air that has carbon dioxide. Okay, udara yang dah digunakan daripada lung tu akan masuk dan disimpan dalam anterior dulu. Okay, so on exhalation, so both set of air sac deflate, forcing fresh air from the posterior sac into the lung and stale air from the anterior out through the trachea. So kita tengok balik semula, kat sini. Saya padam dulu apa yang saya conteng kat sini. Okay, so ingat kalau inhalation, during inhalation, both, okay, jap. Both anterior, okay, anterior ini, anterior and posterior air sac expand. Tolong highlight kat sini. Inhalation, anterior and posterior air sac expand. When expand, the posterior is filled with fresh air. The anterior, okay, the anterior is filled with the used air from the lungs. Okay, the stale air from the lung. That is during inhalation. During exhalation, okay, both of these air sac will deflate. So highlight perkataan deflate ni dalam semasa exhalation. So exhalation, both air sac deflate. So what happened during this stage? So the fresh air from the posterior will enter into the lung. Okay, the used air or the stale air from the anterior will move out. Okay, through the trachea and out into the atmosphere. Okay, so that is one flow, one way, okay, unidirectional flow of air during inhalation and also exhalation for birds. Okay. Okay, so due to the unidirectional airflow and cross-current blood flow, made the avian respiratory system is the most efficient among terrestrial vertebrates. So if you look at this diagram here, okay, so dia nak tunjuk kalau bird tadi dia cakap dia guna apa? Two cycle, kan? Two cycle breathing. Previous. Okay, yeah, 2 cycle breathing processes. It means that 2 inhalation and 2 exhalation. Okay, 2 inhalation and 2 exhalation. Nampak? First inhalation, first exhalation, second inhalation, second exhalation. Okay, 2 kali inhalation, 2 kali exhalation. That's why 2 cycle breathing, 2 cycle breathing mechanism lah. Okay, so kalau tengok kat sini, okay, first, during first inhalation, okay, what happened? Posterior, okay, and also anterior air sac will expand. So when expand, the posterior is filled with fresh air. The anterior is filled with stale air from the lung. Okay, so during exhalation, okay, during exhalation, both of the air sac will deflate. So fresh air from the posterior will be pushed into the lung, okay, and the stale air from the lung, from the anterior will move out through the trachea and out into the atmosphere. Okay, so that is one unidirectional airflow. Okay, for bird. So kenapa dia most efficient? Sebab bila bird ni dia inhale ke exhale, dia inhale ke dia exhale ke, the lung is always supplied with oxygen. Berbeza dengan manusia, dengan kita, when we inhale, our lung is will be supplied with oxygen. Tapi bila kita exhale, cuba hembuskan nafas, pada masa tu oksigen tak adalah masuk dalam lung, faham tak? Okay, tapi kalau untuk bird ni, dia exhale ke, dia inhale ke, the lung is always supplied with oxygen. Okay, so that's why for bird it is the most efficient, okay, to way to extract oxygen from the air. Okay, so this make sure that the bird is always supplied with oxygen. Okay, so number 2, identify and describe the structures and functions of human respiratory system. So ini nak tengok untuk human lah pula kan, so the lung. Okay, so breathing is the mechanical process of moving air from the environment, from the atmosphere into the lungs and expel air from the lungs. Okay, so mammal use negative pressure breathing. Tadi kalau frog positif kalau mammals, human, okay, we use negative pressure breathing. Please highlight that one. So which involve pulling air into the lung. So when we inhale, we will expand our thoracic cavity. Okay, so expand, so therefore the volume increase. So when the volume inside our lung increase, the thoracic cavity increase, the volume of the lung increases. So what happened? The pressure inside the lung will drop. Okay, so maksudnya ada banyak ruang lah untuk gas masuk. Gas tu daripada mana? Gas tu daripada outside lah, from the atmosphere. Okay. Okay, so this is the atmosphere. Okay, the atmosphere pressure outside is high, and when you inhale, okay, the volume increase, pressure decrease. So when you expand your chest, your thoracic cavity, the pressure inside will decrease, and so therefore the air outside will enter into your nostril, your nasal cavity, your trachea, down your trachea into the left and right bronchi and into the lung. Okay, so this is what happened during inhalation. But when you exhale, okay, so you will decrease the volume inside the lung, okay, inside your chest, inside your lung. So volume decrease. When volume decrease, you increase the pressure inside your lung. So this will force the air from the lung to move out, okay, to be exhaled into the atmosphere. So that is during exhalation. Okay, so that's why for mammals we use negative pressure breathing. Okay, negative tu maksudnya dalam badan awak tu, dalam thoracic cavity, pressure is low, outside is high. So the high pressure outside will be forced into your lung. Tapi kalau frog tu tadi, dalam badan dia pressure dah tinggi kan, dalam buccal cavity tinggi, so the pressure inside the buccal cavity will be forced into the lung. So that's why kalau frog tadi positive pressure breathing due to the increased pressure inside the buccal cavity that forces the air into the lung. Okay, so that's why for frog they use positive. For human, for mammal, we use negative pressure breathing. The pressure inside our lung will be reduced during inhalation that forces the air outside to move into your respiratory system. Okay. So according to Boyle's law, when the volume of a given quantity of gas increases, its pressure decrease. Tadilah. So volume increase, pressure decrease. Okay. So inhaling air is referred to as inspiration. Exhaling is expiration. Okay, you can use either one. Sama je. Okay, so respiration. So this is the definition for respiration. So is the process of gas exchange between organism and its environment. So during respiration, oxygen from the environment is taken up, okay, and delivered into individual cells. Okay, so the oxygen will be delivered to individual cell so that every cell is supplied with oxygen to carry out cellular respiration to generate energy in the form of ATP. Okay, and the byproduct is carbon dioxide. Okay, so at the same time, carbon dioxide generated during cellular respiration is excreted into the environment during exhalation. Okay. So the respiratory system of human consists of the lungs and a series of tubes. Okay, so tubes start daripada mana? Larynx, okay, and then down pharynx, and then bronchi, bronchioles, and then enter into your alveolus. Okay, so tube tu yang tadi lah, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles. Okay, so breathing to move air from the environment into the lungs and expelling air from the lungs into the environment. Okay, so this is the flow, okay, of air. So air enters into the body through the nostril and flows down the nasal cavity. So this is the nasal cavity. Then nasal cavity is here. Okay, so from outside into the nasal cavity. So air passes through the nose. It is filtered. So dalam punya lubang hidung ada apa, hair. Okay. So the function of those hair is to as filters. Okay. So to filter any contaminant from the air that you inhale. Okay. So and also this air will be moistened and brought to body temperature. So ingat kat sini. So the air will be filtered, moistened, and brought to body temperature. So it means that if the outside air is really cold, so when you breathe in, so the cold air will be brought to your body temperature. Okay, so nasal cavity lined with moist ciliated epithelium that is rich in blood vessels. So cells within the epithelium produce mucus, okay, to trap inhaled dirt, bacteria and other foreign particles. This is macam kita tengok dalam chapter immune lah kan. So this one is the first line defense. Okay, first line defense or external barrier. Okay. So from the nasal cavity, it moves down the pharynx. So tengok pharynx ni adalah junction, okay, between the respiratory system and the digestive system. Okay, so the digestive system, it leads to the esophagus. From the esophagus into the stomach lah. Okay, into the stomach. Okay, into the stomach. So from pharynx, if it leads to the trachea, okay, the respiratory system sudah akan masuk kepada larynx. So larynx is also known as the Adam's apple. Okay, Adam's apple. From larynx into the trachea, or also known as the windpipe. Okay. So itu flow dia, awak kena ingat So this nostril, nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, and also trachea. So when you are breathing, when you are inhaling, nampak kat sini. So this is ada structure, satu structure ni, kita namakan dia sebagai epiglottis. Okay, epiglottis. So when you inhale, epiglottis ni dia akan face upward. Okay, so this allows the air to enter into the larynx. But when you are eating, okay, when you are about to swallow the food, kan, or makan kat sini kan, so it forms bolus, kan. So the epiglottis akan move downward and close the larynx. Okay, so that the bolus can enter into the esophagus. Sebab itulah tak boleh makan dengan gelojoh. Faham tak? Tu yang akan menyebabkan dia tercekik masuk mana? Masuk kat awak punya respiratory system tu, tercekik masuk dekat sini. So that's why dia akan prevent awak, dia akan menyebabkan awak choke kat situ kan. So dia akan tutup kat sini ni when you are choking. Okay. So instead of masuk kat dalam esophagus, dia masuk kat dalam awak punya larynx. Okay, and block your airways. Okay. So the trachea is made up of cartilage. Okay, cartilage or C-shape tracheal cartilage, dia bentuk C-shape ni. So this is the anterior portion, kan, ini anterior. Okay, behind the trachea you have the esophagus. Kan, so bila cuba rasa awak punya leher, kat bahagian depan tu ada trachea, kan, yang keras. Yang kat belakang tu, dekat belakang ada esophagus. Okay. So from the trachea, it leads to the left and right primary bronchus, and from the bronchus into the bronchioles. Okay, into the right and left lungs. Okay. Okay. So the trachea divides into two branches, which is the bronchi, each of which connects to a lung. So you have the right lungs, you have the left lungs. Okay. So as you can see, the right lungs here, it has 3 lobes. 1, 2, 3. It has 3 lobes. As for the left lungs, it has 2 lobes. Okay. Macam tu. Okay. So both trachea and bronchi are lined by mucous membrane containing ciliated cells to trap dirt, bacteria and other foreign particles. Itu ingatkan kita belajar masa chapter immune. The trachea is lined with cilia, okay, and it has we call it as the goblet cells. Okay, so the function of the goblet cell is to secrete mucus. So when you inhale air, so the contaminant within the air will be trapped by the mucus. Okay, and then the cilia will swipe the mucus upward to enter into the esophagus. Maksudnya kat sini kan, it's awak punya trachea, so it is lined with cilia. It has the goblet cells. Okay, the goblet cell produces mucus. The mucus function to trap dirt. Okay, so the mucus will swipe the cilia will swipe the mucus upward, okay, until it enters into the esophagus to be swallowed and enters into the stomach to be digested by the stomach acid. Okay. Okay, so the lungs. Okay, so the lungs are large, paired, and spongy organs occupying the thoracic cavity or the chest cavity. Okay, thoracic cavity. So this is your lung kan. So you have the rib cage, kan? You have your rib cage. So the cavity dalam apa punya bawah rib cage, so seluruh tu kita namakan dia sebagai thoracic cavity. Okay, where the lungs are located. So the right lungs has 3 lobes. Okay, the left lungs has 2 lobes covered with pleural membrane. So your lungs are covered by pleural membrane. Okay, so inside the pleural membrane you have the pleural fluid. Okay, you have the pleural cavity which contains pleural fluids. Okay, so pleural membrane forms a continuous sac that encloses the lung lining or lining the thoracic cavity. So the space between the pleural membrane is the pleural cavity that contains liquid to provide lubrication. Okay, to provide lubrication between the lungs and the chest wall. So when you inhale, obviously akan ada macam friction, and to reduce this friction, so that's why they must have liquid to act as lubrication. Okay, so inside the lungs is bronchi, which branches into millions of tiny bronchioles into each lung. So from bronchioles, it enters into individual alveolus. Okay. Okay, so each bronchioles and in a cluster of tiny air sac, which is the alveoli. Okay, so each alveolus, kalau singular is alveolus, banyak alveoli. Okay, so each alveolus is lined by an extremely thin single layer of epithelial cells. So gases diffuse freely into the walls of the alveolus into the capillaries that surround it. Okay, so as you can see in this diagram, you can see the alveolus. Okay, it has structure like this. Okay, it is macam folded lah. Okay, kan? So you have many alveolus that is surrounded by many blood capillaries, and the alveolus is clustered like this. Okay, so this is to increase surface area. So when surface area is increased, so rate of diffusion increase. Okay. So respiration will occur very quickly lah. So gases diffuse freely from the walls of the alveolus into the blood capillaries. Okay, so kalau merah ni oxygen lah kan, oxygen rich blood kan. So oxygen rich blood, it has high concentration of oxygen. Okay, so this one kan, the blood is filled with oxygen and it leads to the pulmonary vein. Okay, so ingat pulmonary vein is the blood vessels coming from the lungs that is filled with oxygen-rich blood that will then later enter into your heart. Okay, so the heart, dia akan enter which part? The left part of the heart lah kan, on the left atrium and the left ventricle. Before the left ventricle pumps the oxygen-rich blood throughout the body in the systemic circuit. Okay, kalau yang biru ni is oxygen poor blood. Okay, so coming from pulmonary artery. So this one, it comes from the right ventricle lah kan, right ventricle. Okay, so ingat right side of the heart is to pump oxygen poor blood from the heart to the lung. Left side of the heart is to pump oxygen rich blood from the heart to the rest of the body in the systemic circuit. Okay, ingat artery, pulmonary vein ni. Okay, so the muscular floor of the thoracic cavity is the diaphragm. Okay, so this is the diaphragm. Besar pula dia. Okay, so this is the diaphragm. Okay, so the inner pleural cavity is filled with visceral. The inner pleural cavity is called as the visceral pleural. Okay, visceral pleural membrane. So maksudnya bahagian dalam pleural membrane tu kita namakan dia sebagai visceral pleural. Dia ada dua lapisan. Okay, pleural membrane ni dia ada dua lapisan. Bahagian dalam, bahagian luar. Bahagian dalam we call it as the visceral pleural. Bahagian luar we call it as the parietal pleural membrane. Okay. So in between the visceral pleural and the parietal pleural, you have the pleural cavity. Okay. So this is the intercostal muscle, the muscle between the your rib bone. Okay. Ini your rib cage. So in between your rib bone, you have the intercostal muscle. Okay. Dulu syllabus dekat peringkat asasi ni, dia adalah tanya kan kalau intercostal muscle ni expand, relax. Sekarang dah tak ada dah. You don't have to remember this one kan. Diaphragm lowered, and then itu yang for your syllabus yang baru ni dia tak tanya dah. Okay. Sebab dah cover masa SPM. Sekejap. Okay, so again the same diagram, not the same, but it is showing the respiratory system for human. So as you can see, the air from outside, okay, the air from the atmosphere enters into the nostril, into the nasal cavity. So in the nasal cavity, it will be brought to your body temperature. It will be moistened and it will be filtered. Okay, and then it enters into the pharynx and into the larynx. Okay, so pharynx is the junction between before it enters into the respiratory system and also digestive system. Okay, digestive, it enters into the esophagus. Respiratory into the trachea. Okay, so from the trachea into the left and right. This one is right. Okay, this one is left. Okay, into the right and left lungs. Okay. So here you have the diaphragm. Okay, so as you can see, this one here you have the alveoli. Okay, alveoli, many alveolus can. So they are covered with many blood capillaries. So this one, the blue blood vessels here is the pulmonary artery, which carries oxygen poor blood coming from the heart. Okay, which is from the right side of the heart. And then from there, it enters into the lung, into the alveolus. So the alveolus here, it has high concentration of oxygen. Okay. The partial pressure of oxygen is high in the alveolus. So therefore, it enters into the blood in the blood capillaries. And so therefore, the blood that comes out into the pulmonary vein, it is rich in oxygen. Okay, so oxygen-rich blood will enter into the pulmonary vein to enter into the into the left side of the heart. Okay, left atrium and then into the left ventricle. Okay, from left ventricle throughout the body through the systemic circuit. Okay, so the alveoli are well adapted for gas exchange. So these are the adaptation features. Okay, the features or adaptation, or how the alveoli is adapted, okay, to do its function. Okay, so first, the alveoli provide a large surface area for gas exchange. So I tengok structure dia kan, it is like this kan. So it is highly folded, something like that. So this is to increase surface area, and it is covered with many blood capillaries. So therefore, it provides a large surface area to allow gas exchange to occur. Okay, so ini mesti awak kena ingat. And then second, the surface of the alveoli are moist. Okay, so ini syarat untuk respiratory surface kan. Large, moist, okay, for gases to dissolve before diffusion can occur. Okay, so kalau oxygen daripada airspace within the alveoli and then into the blood capillaries. Okay, blood in the blood capillaries. So the alveoli have thin walls. So the wall of the alveoli is one cell thick. Okay, so same goes to the blood capillaries. The blood capillaries surrounding the alveolus is also one cell thick. So the distance between the gas to diffuse through is only 2 cell thick. Wall of the alveolus and wall of the blood capillaries. Okay, so when the two walls, the alveolus and also the blood capillaries, they are one cell thick. Each one they are one cell thick. So this will decrease the distance. Okay, this will decrease the distance for the gas to diffuse. Okay, so when distance is decreased, so rate of respiration or rate of gas exchange will increase. Okay, so the alveoli are surrounded by numerous blood capillaries, large volume for gas exchange. Okay, so the alveoli are surrounded by many blood capillaries to increase the rate of gas exchange. Okay, large volume for gas exchange. Okay, so next is the fixed law of diffusion. So the diffusion process in respiration is passive. Kan, dia melibatkan proses diffusion. So obviously, diffusion is a passive transport. Okay, so driven only by the difference in oxygen and carbon dioxide concentration on both sides of the membrane. Both sides of the membrane is referring to, for example, kalau macam alveolus, kan, you have high partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, so surrounding the alveolus, you have the blood capillaries, kan? So the blood capillaries, partial pressure of oxygen will be is low, and so the high oxygen concentration will enter into the blood capillaries with low oxygen concentration. Okay, so that is difference. Okay, difference. Okay, in the partial pressure. Okay, so when difference in the partial pressure increase, so therefore rate of diffusion or rate of diffusion of respiratory gas will increase. Okay, so in general the rate of diffusion, okay, between two regions, in this case contohnya alveolus and blood vessels, blood capillaries, okay, is governed by the fixed law of diffusion. So it says here, amount of oxygen or carbon dioxide that diffuses across the membrane of an alveolus depends on the difference in the partial pressure. Okay, partial pressure P P kalau oksigen macam ni lah, macam tu. Kalau carbon dioxide macam tu. Okay, partial pressure on two sides of the membrane and on the surface area of the membrane. So kalau tengok sini, so partial pressure of oxygen is around 100 millimeter mercury. For carbon dioxide is 40 millimeter mercury in the alveolus. Okay, in the alveolus, obviously when you inhale, it is filled with oxygen. The space, the air spaces within the alveolus is packed with oxygen. So the partial pressure of oxygen is really high, which is around 100. To be specific, dia macam 105 macam tu lah. Okay. Okay, so it says here, in the alveoli, the concentration of oxygen is greater than the pulmonary capillaries. Okay, so oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood. Okay, into the blood. Sebab concentration of oxygen in the alveoli is higher compared to the oxygen in the blood capillaries, pulmonary capillaries, sama lah. Okay, so but as for the carbon dioxide, it is more concentrated, okay, in the blood sebab dia baru datang daripada apa punya systemic circuit kan. Okay, so this bring oxygen, this bring blood with high concentration of carbon dioxide. Okay, it brings blood with carbon dioxide, so carbon dioxide from the blood will enter into the alveolus. Okay, carbon dioxide is more concentrated in the blood than in the alveoli, so it diffuses out from the capillaries into the alveoli. Okay, nampak ya? Kat sini. So kalau tengok kat sini, so flow darah dia macam ni lah, kan? So this is blood with carbon dioxide concentration that is high sebab dia baru datang daripada systemic circuit. Okay, so dia masuk melalui pulmonary artery, kan? So pulmonary artery into the pulmonary capillaries. So carbon dioxide diffuse from the blood into alveolus. From the alveolus, oxygen diffuse into the blood. Okay, so dia akan lead kepada pulmonary vein. Okay, which bring oxygen rich blood. Okay, sama juga vice versa, kan? So from cells in the tissue, so your body cells will undergo cellular respiration, so it produces carbon dioxide. Okay, so the carbon dioxide concentration in the cells in the cell is high, which is around 46 millimeter mercury. Okay, compared to the carbon dioxide concentration in the lung, it is 40. So dia akan diffuse lah kan daripada body cells into the blood. Okay, that leads to the lung. Okay, so carbon dioxide akan diffuse lah daripada body cells into blood and into the alveolus to be exhaled out. Okay. Okay, so here you have a formula here, rate for diffusion. So R is the rate of diffusion, which is the amount of oxygen or carbon dioxide diffused per unit of time. So D is the diffusion constant. Okay, ini dia tak bagi, so don't worry. And then, just awak nak kena faham. Okay, in order for rate of diffusion to increase, okay, ini awak just ignore sebab dia constant. Area, okay, the area over which the diffusion takes place. So in order for rate of diffusion to increase, area must be increased also. So that's why alveolus bentuk dia macam ni, and it is covered with many blood vessels kan, large surface. Okay, so area must increase. So delta P ni, okay, which is the difference in concentration. Okay, the difference in concentration ataupun partial pressure of oxygen and also partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Okay, perbezaan antara partial pressure antara dua tempat, contohnya alveolus dengan blood in the blood capillaries, perbezaan tu mesti tinggi, mesti ada perbezaan. Okay, baru boleh berlaku diffusion. Okay, so delta P ni mesti tinggi lah kan, increase in delta P ni. So this will increase rate of diffusion. Okay. So next is distance across the diffusion. The distance across which diffusion takes place. So must be decreased. The diffusion must occur in a short distance. Sebab tu alveolus is covered with or surrounded by many blood capillaries, and the thickness of the wall of the alveolus is 1 cell thick. Kan, alveolus is 1 cell thick, and also blood vessel is also 1 cell thick. Okay, so this reduce or shorten the distance for diffusion to take place. So rate of diffusion will increase. Okay. Okay, so saya dah explain dah. So factors that affects the increment of R. Nak make sure R is always increased. Okay. So increase in surface area. Saya dah mention dah tadi. So highly folded surface area. So the alveolus is folded. The inside the gills, you have the gills lamella, kan? So you have the many gills lamella that is also filled with blood vessels. They are folded also. So this is to make sure the surface area is increased, to make sure that rate of diffusion is also increased. Second, decrease in the diffusion distance. Kan? D must be decreased, short distance. Okay. So difference in the partial pressure, so higher gas concentration difference between the inside and outside of the respiratory system. So contohnya kalau dalam atmosphere, and in the atmosphere, okay, the partial pressure of oxygen is around 159, something like that. In the lung, in the alveolus, okay, the partial pressure of oxygen is 105, something like that. So nampak partial pressure, difference in partial pressure is dia punya difference dia ketara lah, faham tak? So dia akan diffuse lah daripada atmosphere into the lung contohnya. So from the lung into the blood capillaries, partial pressure of oxygen is around 100. So daripada alveolus into blood vessels, okay? From blood vessels into body cell, okay, dia punya partial pressure of oxygen is around 40, something like that. So nampak daripada 100 pergi ke 40. Okay, so from the atmosphere into the lung, into the blood vessels, into the body, so nampak the difference in partial pressure will be lower, will be reduced. So this make sure the oxygen will always be supplied to your body cell. Okay, so the gas will diffuse faster in the difference in in pressure or the surface area increase. Okay, the gas will diffuse faster. Okay, if the difference in pressure or the surface area increase. So maksudnya E dan juga A increase. Okay. Okay, tu tadi fixed law. Okay, yang ni semua melibatkan fixed law. Second law yang ni, Dalton's law of partial pressure, dah macam fizik dah. Okay, so according to the Dalton's law of partial pressure, so in a mixture of gases, the total pressure of the mixture of gas can. So example, in the atmosphere, you have several gases. You have nitrogen, you have oxygen, you have other inert gases, including carbon dioxide. So all these different gases in the atmosphere, okay, each individual gas will exert its own partial pressure. Okay, so it says here, in a mixture of gases, the total pressure of the mixture of gas is the sum of the pressure of the individual gases. So in the atmosphere, you have nitrogen, you have oxygen, you have argon. Okay, you have other inert gases, including carbon dioxide. Okay, so ini sum up. So each individual gas will exert its own partial pressure. Okay, so each gas exert independently of the other a partial pressure, which is the same pressure it will exert if it were present alone. Okay. So these are the gases that are present in the atmosphere. You have the nitrogen, you have the oxygen, argon, and other inert gases, including carbon dioxide. So the percentage of each gases, nitrogen, in the atmosphere, it is consists of 78.09. Okay, oxygen 20.95, argon 0.93, and inert gases and carbon dioxide 0.03. But the total atmospheric pressure at sea level is 760 millimeter mercury. So in order to get the partial pressure for each one, awak kena kalikan. Maksudnya 760 bahagi dengan, bukan bahagi, kali dengan percentage each gases tu. Okay. So kalau kita tengok kat sini, so thus at sea level, the partial pressure of oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide respectively for nitrogen, kan, so kalikanlah. So 700 millimeter mercury kali dengan 78.09%, you get kalau partial pressure for nitrogen is 593.5 millimeter mercury. Oxygen kalikan 760 kali dengan 20.95, you get 159.2 millimeter mercury. For carbon dioxide, 700 you times by 0.03, you get 0.2 millimeter mercury. Okay, so yang ini boleh ignore sebab kita nak tengok untuk respiratory gas sahaja, kan. So nitrogen you ignore, so you want this value only, okay, especially for oxygen. Okay, so each gas move from the region of higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. So the increase in partial pressure ensures efficient gas exchange, which is delta P ni increase. So sebenarnya kalau the way that you write partial pressure ni, bukan yang ni mesti subscript maksudnya P yang 2, PO2, P, okay, macam tu. Okay, gas tu mesti subscript, bukan sama level dengan P. Okay, so in human, the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolus is 105. Note kat sini. Dalam alveolus ni, partial pressure of oxygen is 105. Atmosphere, tadi partial pressure of oxygen berapa? 159. So obviously from high pressure, okay, into the alveolus. Okay, from high pressure from the atmosphere into the alveolus. Okay, from one 159 to 105 in the alveolus. Okay. So in the blood that leaves the alveolus has a lower partial pressure that is about 100 millimeter mercury. So in the blood vessels, partial pressure of oxygen is 100. Nampak tak? Tadi saya dah tulis kan? Okay. So daripada 159 ke 105 ke 100. From the atmosphere into the alveolar spaces in the blood vessels. Okay, in the blood vessels is 100. So when the blood reaches body tissues, kan? So the body tissue, it has even lower partial pressure of oxygen. So partial pressure of oxygen in body tissue is really low, which is around 40. Okay, so nampak tak diffusion dia? So daripada 100 pergi ke 40. Kan? So obviously oxygen will enter into your body cells, okay, to be used for cellular respiration. Okay, but if you are at a higher altitude, awak kat atas gunung ke mendaki whatever, so the at higher altitudes with percentage of gas is still the same, but atmospheric pressure is different. Kalau at sea level is 760 tadi kan, tapi kalau kat tempat yang lebih tinggi is around 880. So awak kalikan je lah. So at higher level, at higher altitude, dekat atas gunung ke whatever, so the partial pressure of oxygen is, so kalikanlah 380 times by 20.95, you get 80. So bayangkan, sebab tu kalau kat atas gunung, it is harder for you to breathe. Kan, it is higher for you to breathe because the chance of oxygen to get into your lung is lower. Okay, so kat atmosphere, imagine lah 80 millimeter mercury, the partial pressure of oxygen. To enter into your lung, partial pressure of oxygen in the lung is 105. Macam mana daripada low nak pergi ke high? Faham tak? Okay, so that's why it is harder for you to breathe when you are at a higher altitude. Tapi badan awak boleh adapt. Okay, boleh adapt dengan cara nanti kita tengok later in this slide. Okay, ada cara dia. Okay, you will have to breathe more heavily, kan? So this reduced in partial pressure of oxygen prevent the oxygen from entering the lungs. Okay, so this is because the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolus is higher, which is 105 millimeter mercury. Tak boleh lah daripada 80 nak pergi masuk ke 105 kan. So proses yang terlibat ni adalah diffusion. So diffusion daripada high concentration to low concentration, from high partial pressure to low partial pressure. Tak boleh daripada 80 ke 105. So that's why it is harder for you to breathe when you are at higher altitude. Okay, so process of gas exchange and gas transport. Okay, so gas exchange. Oxygen is inhaled. Sorry, kita break sekejap. 2 minit. Okay, 2 minit. So siapa yang nak pergi toilet, pergilah. Nak minum air tak boleh. Okay. So kita break sekejap saja. Okay, so let's proceed to the next part, which is process of gas exchange and also gas transport. So for this part, we are going to look at how gas exchange occurs between alveolus and also blood capillaries. Senang je lah if you faham konsep apa difference in partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So it is really easy. Okay, so the gas exchange. So oxygen in the inhaled air dissolve in the film of moisture on the epithelial cells, diffuse across the epithelium and into the blood capillaries. So this is the alveolar airspace. Okay, so obviously when you inhale, the concentration of oxygen or the partial pressure of oxygen inside these airspace of alveolus will be high. So tak kat sini P02 kan partial pressure dia tinggi. So which is around 105. Okay, so therefore oxygen from the alveolus enters into the blood. Dengan cara apa? The oxygen will diffuse, okay, across the moist wall of the alveolar wall. So the alveolar wall is made up of epithelial cells. Okay, it is one cell thick. So it diffuses across the wall of the alveolus, which is one cell thick, and across the wall of the blood capillaries, which is also one cell thick before it enters into the into your blood cell. Okay, within your blood cell you have pigments. We call it as hemoglobin. So the oxygen will bind to the hemoglobin, forming oxyhemoglobin. Okay, and as for the carbon dioxide from the blood cell, okay, so within the blood cells, again you have the hemoglobin, which previously binds to the carbon dioxide, which it forms carbaminohemoglobin. So carbon dioxide will be released, so it diffuses across in the opposite way lah. So as for the carbon dioxide diffuses in the opposite way from the blood capillaries, okay, across the epithelium of the alveolus into the airspace of the alveolus and out of the body as exhaled air. Okay, so kalau tengok kat sini, so this is from the pulmonary artery. So the pulmonary artery, as I mentioned before, it brings in oxygen poor blood from the heart lah, kan? So this one, it brings in oxygen poor blood. So out from the lung, okay, to the pulmonary vein, it brings oxygen rich blood to the heart. Okay. So the wall of the alveolus, it must be moist. It has a film of moisture to allow respiratory gas to be dissolved and to be able to diffuse across the wall of the alveolus and the wall of the blood capillaries. Okay. So next. Okay, it says here the alveolar air, okay, and the blood capillaries are separated by only two cell layers. Okay, two cell layers, satu daripada wall of the alveolus, satu lagi daripada wall of blood capillaries. Okay, so that's why it says here separated by two cell layers. So the distance between the air and the blood is only 0.5 to 1.5 micrometer. Okay. So this allows rapid diffusion of gases, so decreasing D in the Fick's law. So distance reduce, R increase. Okay, rate of diffusion increase. Okay, so as you can see from this diagram here, so this is the alveolus, the airspace within the alveolus. So inside the alveolus, you have a cell, we call it as the surfactant secreting cell. Okay, type 2 cell. The function of this cell is to secrete a fluid, we call it as a surfactant. So the function of this surfactant is to hold the structure of the alveolus so that it will not collapse. Faham tak? Bila awak tengok structure alveolus tu tadi, it is one cell thick kan? So and dia ada moisture juga. So imagine awak ambil plastik, awak basahkan dia. Faham tak? So bila dia plastik tu basah, obviously plastik tu akan melekat. So the same goes to the alveolus, to prevent the alveolus from collapsing, from sticking to each other, kan? To maintain that it is always inflated, kan? It has airspace inside it. So the function of this cell is to, surfactant secreting cell is to secrete surfactant to maintain the structure of the alveolus so that it will not collapse. Okay. And as you can see here, inside the alveolus also you have macrophage. Okay, so a macrophage is to protect the lung from any possibility of invasion of pathogen lah kan. So kita belajar dari itu macrophage is to engulf pathogen that it encounters. Okay. So as you can see here, so this is the blood capillaries that contains red blood cell. So this is the alveolus. So the oxygen from the alveolus will diffuse across the alveolus wall into the and across the blood capillaries and into your red blood cells that contains hemoglobin. So oxygen will bind to hemoglobin. Okay. Okay, so gas exchange between alveolar and blood capillaries. So each alveolus serves as a tiny depot from which oxygen is loaded into the blood by capillaries. Okay, so dia untuk alveolus ni untuk oksigen dikumpulkan sebelum dia masuk ke dalam blood cells in the blood capillaries. Okay, so next, okay, gas exchange in the lung. Okay, so sama je kan, so the concentration of oxygen is more concentrated in the alveoli than in the pulmonary capillaries. Sebab daripada pulmonary artery, it brings oxygen poor blood kan, so the oxygen will diffuse from the alveoli into the blood, okay, into the blood. So oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood, carbon dioxide in the opposite direction, which is more concentrated in the blood than in the alveoli. So carbon dioxide diffuse out of the capillaries into the alveoli. Okay, so when you exhale, the carbon dioxide will be released to the atmosphere. Okay, so tadi kita tengok gas exchange in the lung. So now we are going to look at gas exchange in the tissue. Okay, so sama je konsep dia. So oxygen is more concentrated in the blood sebab dia baru datang daripada lung tadi kan. Okay, so from lung into the heart, so the heart pumps throughout the body. So oxygen is more concentrated in the blood than in the body cells. Kalau blood tadi berapa concentration of oxygen? Yep. Okay, so this is blood. Concentration or partial pressure of oxygen is 100. Okay, 100 millimeter mercury. In your body cell, your body tissue, the concentration or the partial pressure of oxygen is around 40. So obviously, daripada blood into your body cells, okay, to be used for cellular respiration. And from body cell, through cellular respiration, it produces the byproduct which is carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide partial pressure is high. From berapa dia punya partial pressure dia? Partial pressure of carbon dioxide, if I'm not mistaken, is around more than 46. Okay, 46. Dalam darah ni, partial pressure of carbon dioxide is around 40. Okay, 40 millimeter mercury. So nampak daripada 46 pergi ke 40 lah, from high to low. Okay. So carbon dioxide is more concentrated in the cell. It diffuses out of the cell and moves into the blood. Okay. So in your red blood cells, you have many pigments. We call it as the hemoglobin. Ingat ya, one red blood cells will contains many hemoglobins that will bind to the respiratory gas, oxygen and also carbon dioxide. Okay, tengoklah tempat dia kat mana. Okay. Okay, so transported by hemoglobin. So ingat ya, hemoglobin is the pigment in the red blood cell. Okay, jangan ingat red blood cells tu adalah hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the pigment that are found in red blood cells. So red blood cell will contain hundreds of thousands of hemoglobin. And each hemoglobin will bind to, okay, 4 molecule of oxygen. Okay, because for hemoglobin structure, it consists of 4 polypeptide chain, 2 alpha chain and 2 beta chain. And in the middle, you have the hem group. Okay, and the hem group, inside the hem group, you have an ion. Okay, ferrum. Okay, so the ion or the ferrum will bind to oxygen molecule for each one. So for each hemoglobin, it binds to 4 molecule of oxygen. Ingat molecule. This is molecule. O2 is molecule. O is atom. Satu O je is atom. One atom of oxygen. So maksudnya kalau nak cakap, dia akan bind kepada 8 oxygen atom lah. Kan? 8 oxygen atoms. Okay. 4 oxygen molecule. Okay. So at the center of each hem group is an atom of iron, ferrum, okay, which can bind to a molecule of oxygen. Okay. So from the oxygen is loaded in the lung, so dia akan form apa? Oxyhemoglobin. Okay. And then oxygen is unloaded in tissues, okay, to supply oxygen to your body cells. Okay. So in the lungs, so due to the differences in partial pressure between the alveolus and the blood capillaries, hemoglobin in the blood load up with oxygen, forming oxyhemoglobin. So bila oxygen tu bind kepada hemoglobin, we call it as a hemoglobin. So this occurs in the lung lah. So in body tissues, oxygen is unloaded. Okay, oxygen that has bound to the hemoglobin will be released to your body cell. That's why it is unloaded. Before carbon dioxide then bind with the hemoglobin to form deoxyhemoglobin. Okay. Oxygen release, oxyhemoglobin release oxygen forming deoxyhemoglobin. Rewind. Bukan, carbon dioxide bila dia bind kepada hemoglobin, kita panggil dia sebagai carbaminohemoglobin. Bukan deoxyhemoglobin ya. Deoxyhemoglobin is when oxygen is released from the hemoglobin. When carbon dioxide bind to the hemoglobin, we call it as the carbaminohemoglobin. Okay. So daripada gambar ni dia just nak tunjuk difference in partial pressure je lah. So faham macam saya explain tadi lah. Okay, so partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere is high kan, ATM. Saya short form as ATM, which is kat sini dia bundarkan 160, tapi daripada calculation tadi partial pressure of oxygen is around 159 point something kan. Okay, so inside the lung is around ni dia buat 104, tapi kita tengok tadi daripada calculation 105, lebih kurang lah kan. So in the alveolus is 104 in this case lah, 104, 105 samalah. Okay, lebih kurang. So in the blood vessels kan, dia kat sini dalam gambar rajah ni dia bagi 104 kan, tapi samalah juga. Sepatutnya oxygen in the blood vessels is 100 kalau kita tengok yang tadi lah kan. Ni dia cakap kat sini 100 in the blood that gives the alveolus. Okay, is 100. Okay, so in your body cells kan, the partial pressure of oxygen is 40. So nampaklah kan, boleh nampak basically dia nak bagi tahu daripada partial pressure of oxygen is high from outside, enter into the alveolus, into your blood vessels and into your blood, into your body kan. So kalau carbon dioxide vice versa lah kan. So from your body cells into the blood capillaries and into the alveolus and out when you exhale. So this is carbon dioxide, exhale out. Okay. Okay, so sama juga gambar ni kan. So gambar ni daripada Campbell. Okay, tak ada dalam Solomon. So kita start dengan kat sini dulu, partial pressure of oxygen. Nampak tak dia buat subscript oxygen ni. You do not write it like this So the gases you write it as subscript. Okay. So partial pressure of oxygen is 100 in alveolus. Tukar kat sini 105. Okay, kita selaraskan dia supaya senang nak faham. Okay, 105 in the alveolus, kita ambil daripada yang kat sini. Okay, 105 in the alveolus. Okay. Atmosphere, jot down kat sini is 159. Okay, for oxygen. Okay, so 159 from the atmosphere into the alveolus, 105 into the blood vessels, 100 into your body cell is 40. Okay, less than 40, something like that. And masuk balik ke dalam aliran darah awak, dia akan maintain 40. Okay. And for carbon dioxide in the opposite direction, so from body cells, okay, into your blood vessels. So body cell is more than 46, okay, millimeter mercury into your blood, which is 46, and then enters into your airspace in the alveolus, which is 40. Okay, so from high to low, okay, from high partial pressure of carbon dioxide to low partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the alveolus. Okay. Okay, so next, now we are going to look at how carbon dioxide is transported. Ini antara kena tahulah juga. Okay, kena tahu. Okay. So carbon dioxide is transported in the bloodstream in 3 forms. Okay. Form yang pertama is, ini awak kena ingat dia punya percentage juga. So 7 to 8% dissolve in blood plasma. Okay. Second, 20% binds to hemoglobin. Ini carbon dioxide . And yang ketiga, carbonate ion. Dia sebagai as carbonate ion, HCO3 minus, kan 3 subscript minus superscript kat sini sepatutnya. Okay. Okay, which is 72%. So paling banyak as bicarbonate ion. Okay, bicarbonate ion. So kalau awak tengok kat sini kan, so 7 to 8% as dissolve in blood plasma. So yang 20% bind kepada hemoglobin kat sini to form carbaminohemoglobin, and yang ni 72%. Yang ni 20%. Okay. So ini daripada body cells lah kan, body cells. Sebab apa? Dia akan undergo cellular respiration that produces carbon dioxide. So dia akan lalu daripada body cell, akan travel in your blood vessels, which is the vein, and enters into your heart to be pumped to the lung. So bila dah reach lung, kan, so this is blood vessels in the lung, which is pulmonary capillary, kan kat sini. So you have your red blood cells tu tadi. So dia akan undergo the opposite reaction lah kan. So tadi dalam bentuk bicarbonate ion, kan, bicarbonate ion. So dia masuk balik dalam awak punya red blood cells. So dia akan gabung balik dengan hydrogen ion. So dia akan jadi carbonic acid. Carbonic acid dia akan dissociate jadi water and carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide akan terhasil and then it diffuse into the alveolus. Okay, kalau yang ni carbaminohemoglobin ni, so dia akan release carbon dioxide, so and then diffuse out of the red blood cells into the alveolus. So ini tadi berapa persen? 20% kan? Yang ini 72% dalam awak punya blood plasma as dissolved carbon dioxide is 7 to 10% as dissolved carbon dioxide in the blood plasma. So ini awak kena ingat tiga ni, 1, 2, 3. 3 forms of how carbon dioxide are transported. Okay, the first one is 7% of carbon dioxide dissolved in blood plasma, while the remaining will diffuse into red blood cells. Kan? So 7% akan dissolve dalam blood plasma tu. So the remaining 20%, kan, kalau 20% akan bind kepada hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. So this is the formula HbCO2. Okay, so it binds with the polypeptide chain in the hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. And then most of the carbon dioxide 72% reacts with water, kan? Carbon dioxide ni reacts with water to form carbonic acid H2CO3, and the reaction is catalyzed by this enzyme carbonic anhydrase. Ingat ni, enzyme ni carbonic anhydrase is the enzyme that catalyzes the reaction between carbon dioxide and water to form carbonic acid. So once carbonic acid is formed, it will dissociate into bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. So when your body produces so much, when your body cells respire and you're producing so much carbon dioxide, this will cause your blood to be acidic. Okay, to be acidic, your blood. Dalam kita belajar homeostasis hari tu, blood pH has to be maintained at 7.4. So to prevent your blood from being acidic daripada reaction ni tadi, okay, so the function that another function of a hemoglobin, apart from it binds to the carbon dioxide, it also binds to the hydrogen ion, okay, from this reaction. So this will prevent your blood from becoming acidic from this reaction, okay, from this reaction. Okay, so in red blood cells, carbonic acid H2CO3 dissociates into bicarbonate ion CHO3 minus and hydrogen ion. So ini yang akan menyebabkan awak punya blood jadi acidic. To prevent your blood from becoming acidic, so that's hemoglobin akan bind. Okay, so hemoglobin binds most of the hydrogen ion from the bicarbonate from the carbonic acid, preventing the hydrogen ion from acidifying the blood. So most of the bicarbonate ion diffuses into the blood plasma, carried in the bloodstream to the lung. So nampak bicarbonate ion ni dia akan ada dalam awak punya blood plasma. Dia tak duduk dalam awak punya red blood cells. Cuma reaction sebelum nak hasilkan bicarbonate ion ni berlaku dalam red blood cells. Okay, berlaku dalam red blood cells. Setelah terhasil bicarbonate ion, dia akan travel to your lung as bicarbonate ion. Okay, bicarbonate ion. Bila dah sampai lung, baru dia akan masuk balik dalam red blood cells awak, undergo the reverse reaction. Okay, so the reverse reaction is also catalyzed by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase tadi. Okay, forward reaction, carbon dioxide, water becoming carbonic acid is catalyzed by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. The opposite reaction bila dah sampai lung is also catalyzed by the same enzyme, which is carbonic anhydrase. Okay, so nampak dekat sini kan, ini dah sampai lung dah sampai lung. LUNGS. Okay, so in your blood plasma ada, dalam blood plasma ada bicarbonate ion. Okay, so masuk balik dalam red blood cells awak, undergo the same reaction. Ini daripada hydrogen released by hemoglobin. Okay, so dia akan jadi carbonic acid. From carbonic acid catalyzed by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase, okay, jadi water and also carbon dioxide. So this reaction occurs in red blood cell. Okay, so carbon dioxide diffused from red blood cells into, ni imagine dalam punya blood plasma blood plasma, and then diffuse out from the blood capillaries into the alveolus, okay, as carbon dioxide. So most bicarbonate ion diffuses into the plasma, carried in the bloodstream to the lungs. Okay, so in the opposite reaction lah, sama je, benda yang sama. So in the lungs, bicarbonate ion diffuses from the plasma into the red blood cells, combining with hydrogen ion released from hemoglobin and forming carbonic acid. So sama. The same reaction lah, sama lah kan. So this is in your blood plasma, diffuse masuk dalam red blood cells, combine dengan hydrogen ion that was released by hemoglobin kat sini. So dia jadi carbonic acid, catalyzed by carbonic anhydrase kat sini. Jadi water and also carbon dioxide diffuse out until it diffuse into the alveolus. Okay. So carbonic, sama je. So carbon dioxide diffuse into plasma, into the interstitial fluid, then into the alveolar space in the lung, from which it is expelled during exhalation. So expelled during exhalation. Okay. Okay. So next, we are going to look at this graph, the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. Okay. Okay, so oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve is a graph. Okay, so it's a graph showing the amount of oxygen that hemoglobin carries at different oxygen pressures. Okay, so maksudnya dia akan plotkan the partial pressure of oxygen in the lung, the partial pressure in the blood vessels, and the partial pressure in your body tissues. Okay, so the degree of hemoglobin saturation. So saturation tu how much oxygen that the hemoglobin can bind. Okay, so the degree of hemoglobin saturation is determined by the partial pressure of oxygen, which varies in different organs throughout the body. Okay, yang major kita nak tengok dekat lungs, dekat blood vessels, dekat body tissues. Okay. So when these values are graphed, they produce the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Faham kan perkataan ni? Hemoglobin akan somehow releasekan oksigen kan bila dah reach body tissue kan. So that's why we call this as hemoglobin dissociation curve. Okay. So oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve is an S-shaped curve, okay, with a nearly flat slope at high partial pressure of oxygen. High partial pressure of oxygen occurs kat mana? Lungs, kan? Lungs. So obviously dia akan reach flat lah sebab apa? Hemoglobin is saturated with oxygen, okay? Hemoglobin bila dia lalu dekat lung, so dia akan bind dengan oxygen, so obviously dia akan saturate dengan oxygen. So that's why dia akan reach flat kat sini, saturated. Okay, and a steep slope at low partial pressure of oxygen. So low pressure of oxygen, obviously it occurs at your body tissues, kan, that requires the oxygen. So kalau kita tengok kat sini, nampak dia plot dekat lungs, kan, dekat lungs, tissue at rest and tissue during exercise. Dia nak compare jugalah tissue during exercise. So it says here in the lungs, kan, in the lungs, tengok kat sini in the lungs, okay. So the partial pressure of oxygen is approximately 100 millimeter mercury, okay, approximately. So at this partial pressure, the hemoglobin has a high affinity for oxygen and it is 98% saturated. So it means that the hemoglobin will bind with oxygen in the lung. Okay, so that's why the hemoglobin, when it reaches the lung, it is 98% saturated with oxygen. Hemoglobin is 98% saturated with oxygen at the lung. Okay, so kat sini, okay, hemoglobin is 98% saturated with oxygen. So in the tissues of other organ at rest, ini pada dalam keadaan yang relax, kan, tak perlukan banyak oksigen. So a typical partial pressure of oxygen is around 40 millimeter mercury. Here, hemoglobin has a lower affinity for oxygen and releases some but not all of its oxygen to the tissues. So bila hemoglobin to reach body tissue, kan tadi kita tengok body tissue partial pressure dia 40. Faham? So bila hemoglobin reach at this area of low partial pressure, kan, partial pressure of oxygen is low. So at this condition, hemoglobin will have low affinity. Okay, affinity towards oxygen. Nampak ni? So bila hemoglobin has a lower affinity for oxygen, apa jadi? Oxygen will be released to your body tissue to be used for cellular respiration. So, but when hemoglobin leaves the tissue, it is still 75% saturated. Nampak? Bila dia leave, dia dah supply oxygen, hemoglobin dah release oxygen kan to your body tissue. Okay, so hemoglobin ni, it does not release all of its oxygen. It release some, okay. So bila dia keluar daripada body tissues, so it is still 75% saturated with oxygen. Okay, or before it enters back to the lung. So ini at rest. But if you are exercising, okay, obviously when you exercise, your body tissue requires more oxygen. Okay, more lah. More oxygen. Okay, more oxygen. So when your body requires more oxygen, hemoglobin has a very low affinity. Okay, dia ada lebih rendah affinity kepada oksigen, so more oxygen will be released. So when you are exercising, your body tissue requires more oxygen. So bila hemoglobin tu keluar daripada blood vessels coming from your body tissue, so it is about 20% saturated with oxygen. Okay, so dia kena pergi balik ke lung lah to be load with more oxygen, okay, in the lung. Okay, so that's why tadi saya cakap graph tu kita namakan dia sebagai dissociation. Hemoglobin perlu riliskan oksigen bila dia dah reach dekat body tissue supaya oksigen tu dia riliskan kepada body tissue to be used for cellular respiration. That's why we call it as dissociation. Okay. Okay, so dalam keadaan normal tadi saya cakap blood pH kena maintain at 7.4. Okay, but when you are exercising, your body produce more carbon dioxide. Okay, your body tissue produce more carbon dioxide. Tadi kita tengok form reaction tadi kan. So carbon dioxide dia react dengan air. Okay, catalyzed by carbonic anhydrase. So dia jadi carbonic acid. Okay, dia jadi CH2, so C2CO3 kan tadi. So dia akan dissociate jadi bicarbonate ion CHCO3 minus plus H plus. So this condition causes your blood pH to be reduced daripada 7.4 jadi 7.2. Okay, so because your body cells produces more carbon dioxide and causes your blood to be more acidic. Dia tak adalah turun sampai below 6 up to 2 kan, dia jadi 7.2. Okay, so that's why bila dalam exam dia tanya kalau macam the normal blood pH must be at 7.4. Below than that, dia akan consider as acidic. Okay, so it says here carbon dioxide react with water forming carbonic acid ni kan, carbonic acid, and lowers the pH which decreases the affinity for hemoglobin for oxygen. Nampak? Sebab reaction ni. Carbonic acid akan dissociate jadi bicarbonic acid and also hydrogen ion. So when your blood is acidic, okay, 7.2 condition dia, so this will lower, okay, lower the affinity, even dia akan make the hemoglobin has even lower affinity towards oxygen. Okay, so maksudnya hemoglobin akan release more oxygen to your body tissue at the point of your body tissue that requires more oxygen. Okay, so which decreases the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen, and this affects an effect we call it as the Bohr shift. Okay, Bohr shift. The dissociation curve move towards the right. So dia akan bergerak ke sini, dia shift towards the right. Nampak, ini dalam keadaan normal. Okay, Tapi when you are exercising, your body requires more oxygen, so graph tu akan shift to the right. Okay, so it means that bila shift to the right, the hemoglobin has even lower affinity for oxygen. Means that kalau oxygen is released, it will be supplied to your respiring tissue, body tissue awak yang sedang perlukan lebih banyak oksigen untuk provide more energy kan for cellular respiration. Okay, so thus carbon dioxide production is greater. Thus, where carbon dioxide production is greater, hemoglobin releases more oxygen, okay, which can be used to support more cellular respiration. Faham Ini dalam keadaan contohnya when you are exercising, okay. When you are exercising, you produce more carbon dioxide. Your body, your blood will become more acidic. When your blood becomes more acidic daripada reaction yang saya dah tulis ni tadi, so this will reduce or lower the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. So when hemoglobin has lower affinity for oxygen, hemoglobin akan release more oxygen to the respiring tissue. Nampak kat sini? Tengok Okay, ini dalam keadaan awak at rest kan tadi kalau hemoglobin di dalam keadaan rest, bila dia keluar daripada respiring tissue, it is still 75% saturated with oxygen. Tapi bila dalam keadaan yang awak exercise contohnya, dia akan release more oxygen lah kat sini kan. So it releases more oxygen. Okay, releases more oxygen here. Okay. So that's why we call this graph as oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. Kebolehan hemoglobin untuk riliskan oksigen pada contohnya when your body cell is respiring. Okay. So far ada soalan tak? Faham ke graf ni? Oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve Okay, so second last kot. Okay, control of breathing. Okay, control of breathing. Okay, so breathing is regulated by involuntary mechanism and involve negative feedback mechanism. Okay, so to ensure that gas exchange is coordinated with blood circulation and with metabolic demand. Okay, so it involves here the medulla oblongata. Okay, medulla oblongata, which is in the brain, regulates breathing. Okay, so neural circuit in the medulla form a pair of breathing control centers or respiratory centers which establish breathing rhythm. Okay, awak bernafas dengan laju ataupun dalam keadaan normal. Okay, so it is regulated here in the medulla oblongata. So specialized chemoreceptors, okay, are sensitive to changes in carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion concentration. So ingat when your cell is respiring, okay, your cell is producing more carbon dioxide, is producing more hydrogen ion, causes your blood to be more acidic. Okay. So the central chemoreceptor in the medulla oblongata are sensitive to hydrogen ion but not carbon dioxide. So ini condition yang mana blood awak jadi acidic ni disebabkan oleh your cell producing more carbon dioxide. So central chemoreceptor ni it does not detect carbon dioxide, it detects hydrogen ion. Okay, it detects the acidity in your blood. So next one is the peripheral chemoreceptors. Okay, peripheral chemoreceptors at the wall of the aorta is called the aortic bodies. Ini kita namakan dia sebagai peripheral chemoreceptor dekat aorta ni. Ada satu tissue ni we call it as the aortic bodies. Dia bertindak sebagai chemoreceptors. Okay, and also walls of the carotid arteries is called as the carotid bodies. Okay, so these two peripheral chemoreceptor are stimulated by the high partial pressure of carbon dioxide and also hydrogen ion concentration. So peripheral ni by both carbon dioxide and also hydrogen ion. Tapi kalau central by hydrogen ion sahaja. Okay. So it says here, when atrial carbon dioxide partial pressure increase, okay, carbon dioxide partial pressure increase, some of the carbon dioxide diffuse into the cerebral spinal fluid. Okay, they can diffuse into this fluid. So the carbon dioxide reacts with water and will cause increasing of hydrogen ion and decrease in pH. Tadilah reaction ni tadi kan, carbon dioxide react with water, jadi carbonic acid, dissociate jadi bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. See, so this will reduce your blood pH. Tadi daripada normal 7.4 dia akan drop jadi contohnya 7.2. Okay. So this will be detected by central chemoreceptor in the medulla, and this will stimulate the central chemoreceptors. Okay, this is in the brain lah. So due to the hydrogen ion concentration that increase, so impulses are sent to the respiratory centers. So the response, so maksudnya bila keadaan ini dalam keadaan concentration of carbon dioxide is high. Okay, you are respiring, you are producing more carbon dioxide. Okay, so the response is that it increasing the depth and the rate of breathing. Okay, the rate of breathing to remove carbon dioxide until partial pressure of carbon dioxide is lowered. So the breathing rate returns to normal. So dalam keadaan badan awak menghasilkan banyak carbon dioxide, so this mechanism will cause you to breathe more lah, kan, to breathe heavily, so that more carbon dioxide will be released from your body to the atmosphere. So when carbon dioxide concentration or partial pressure and the hydrogen ion concentration increase, okay, so ini dalam keadaan acidic lah, blood is acidic. Okay, you produce more oxygen, your body can produce more oxygen, your body produces more carbon dioxide. Okay, your blood become more acidic due to more hydrogen ion produced. Okay, so this will be detected by the peripheral chemoreceptors yang kat mana tadi? Aortic bodies dekat aorta and also carotid body, kan, dekat carotid arteries, kan, carotid tu dekat neck awak, area neck, kan, carotid arteries. So impulses are sent to the respiratory center. So the response increase the depth and the rate of breathing to remove carbon dioxide until partial pressure of carbon dioxide is lowered. So the breathing rate until the breathing rate returns to normal. Okay, so basically when your body is producing more carbon dioxide, that leads to your blood becoming more acidic. So dia punya mechanism is to increase breathing rate. Okay, increase breathing rate to remove more of the carbon dioxide produced by your body. Okay, so ingat ni ada dua, central chemoreceptor and peripheral chemoreceptor. Central detect hydrogen ion, peripheral detect partial pressure of carbon dioxide and also hydrogen ion. Okay. So as a person breathe deeply, a negative feedback mechanism prevents lung from overexpanding. Okay, so during inhalation, sensors detect stretching of the lung tissue as stimulus. Okay, so stimulus in the form of impulses are sent to the medulla, inhibiting further inhalation. Okay, so when you are breathing heavily, kan, your kalau tak ada mechanism yang macam ni, your lung will be keep on expanding. Nanti dia akan explode lah. So to prevent that, dia akan cause ataupun lead kepada negative feedback that prevent your lung from over expanding. Okay. So nampak kat sini. So homeostasis, your blood pH must be maintained at 7.4. But when your body are producing more carbon dioxide, Contohnya when you are exercising kan, you move more for example kan. So the stimulus rising level of carbon dioxide in tissue and lowers blood pH. Daripada reaction tadi lah kan. Carbon dioxide plus water produces carbonic acid H2CO3. So dia akan ini bicarbonic. Ingat ni formula ni? Carbonic anhydrase. Okay. So dia akan dissociate jadi bicarbonate ion plus. Okay, plus H plus. So ini akan lower the pH to 7.2 for example. Okay, blood become acidic. Okay, so this will be detected by contohnya apa tadi, chemoreceptors kan, central chemoreceptor and also peripheral chemoreceptors. Okay, so tengok carotid. Ada carotid arteries tadi, ada dekat carotid arteries ada carotid bodies and also aorta ada aortic bodies. Okay, so this will detect apa, partial pressure of carbon dioxide and also hydrogen ion. Okay, increase of both lah kan, increase of both hydrogen ion increase ataupun acidity, kan, it becomes more acid, pH reduce lah. Okay, lowest blood pH. Ingat hydrogen ion increase, pH decrease lah kan, pH acidic ingat ini punya chemistry ni. Okay, so medulla detects drop in the ni lah dekat in the brain lah kan. Apa tadi dia punya fluid dia tadi? Cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, cerebrospinal fluid pH. Okay, detects drops in the cerebrospinal fluid daripada reaction ni lah kan. Okay, cerebrospinal fluid ada kat sini. Okay, so this is detected by in the medulla oblongata. So the response, rib muscles and diaphragm increase rate and depth of ventilation. So you will breathe more deeply and heavily. Kan? So this will remove carbon dioxide. Kan? So vice versa jugalah kan. So when you breathe heavily and deeply, so you will inhale more oxygen lah, to supply more oxygen to your body cells, kan, to supply or support cellular respiration of your body cell. Okay, so this is the control of breathing. So the last subtopic here is the effects of smoking to the respiratory system, which is now kita akan tengok kepada lung cancer lah due to smoking. Okay, so as smoke is inhaled, sikit lagi ni. Okay, boleh saya teruskan?
Boleh.
Okay. So as smoke is inhaled, kan awak apa? You inhale or you breathe in the smoke. Okay. Toxic substances paralyze the cilia lining in the trachea and bronchi, preventing removal of inhaled particle. So dia akan matikan. Dia akan matikan cilia-cilia yang ada pada trachea lah. So as you know, the function of the cilia is to swipe any dirt or pathogen that is trapped by the mucus. Okay, so bila cilia is paralyzed, kan, dia mati, so this will not happen. Okay, the sweeping of the mucus upward into the, so that it enters into your esophagus to be digested by the stomach acid. So tak boleh nak berlaku macam tu. Okay, so the tobacco cigarette smoke consists of microscopic carbon particles bearing dozens of cancer causing substances which lead to lung cancer. Okay, so people who smoke cigarettes are 15 to 30 times more likely to get lung cancer or die from lung cancer than people who do not smoke. Okay, so next, nicotine is the addictive substance in the tobacco. So dia akan buat awak addicted to the cigarette. Okay, to the cigarette, it quickly reaches the brain and creates dependency so that the smokers become addicted. So you always want to smoke lah. So tar is the toxic chemical particles left behind by burning tobacco. So this substance form a tacky brown or yellow residues in the lung, okay, in your alveolus. So tar in the cigarette smoke paralyze cilia in the lungs and contribute to lung diseases such as emphysema, chronic bronchitis, and also lung cancer. A few examples of cancer causing substance in the smoke, you have there's cadmium, arsenic, aromatic amines, and many more. Okay, so these are the list of chemicals that are found in the cigarette, okay, that will cause cancer. So ada banyak chemical dalam tu that could lead to cancer. So the cigarette contains many carcinogen, okay, substance that can cause cancer. Okay, so lung cancer is also known as lung carcinoma, okay, characterized by uncontrolled cell growth in the tissues of the lung. So if cancer grows in the airways, it may obstruct airflow, causing breathing difficulties. The obstruction can lead to accumulation of secretion behind the blockage. So tumors in the top of the lung may invade the local part of the systemic nervous system, leading to dropping of the eyelid. Okay. So treatment can be in several forms, which is one is surgery, removal all or as much as possible of the tumor. Chemotherapies, okay, intravenous medicine to kill the cancer, ataupun radiotherapy, okay, high doses of radiation designed to kill the cancer given in focused or shielded beam designed to only affect the tumor. So they focus untuk kill that cancerous cell in the lung. Okay. So this is the healthy lungs, and this is the lung of smoker. Okay, so bayangkanlah kat situ. So do you want your lung to be like this? Okay. Dia punya pleasure dia sekejap je. Dia punya kesan dia is permanent. Okay. So make sure those of you who smokes adalah usaha nak stop smoking, especially dalam bulan puasa ni. Okay. Dia bukan sahaja membahayakan diri awak, dia juga membahayakan kepada orang-orang sekeliling, especially kalau awak dekat dengan baby, especially kalau awak dekat dengan pregnant woman. Okay. So please don't be selfish kat situ. Kan? So you are still young, if you smoke, adakan usaha untuk stop. Okay. So that's the end of chapter 8, which is the end of the whole chapter untuk awak punya biology subject. So far ada soalan?
Tak ada, madam.
Tak ada ya? So if you don't have any questions, so tomorrow kita akan proceed kepada tutorial lah. Saya nak bagi awak punya attendance sekejap.